Welcome back, everybody, to Untangling Climate Finance. I'm Jay Tipton from Gordian Strategies. We are rolling through 2026. This is our third episode of the year, and perhaps one of my favorites yet, because we're exploring a side of climate finance that doesn't get nearly enough airtime. Today, I'm joined by Ignacio Barriendos Hoppichler. That's a fun name, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Austrian. Probably butchered the Austrian part, but Ignacio, please forgive me. Anyways, Ignacio is the CEO and founder of DoGood People, and he was calling in from Madrid, Spain. Ignacio is an entrepreneur and a true believer in the power of people. Not just capital, not just policy, and not just technology, but actual human beings who are showing up every day at work and making small decisions that add up to something much bigger. And here is exactly the thread that I want to pull on before we dive in. We talk a lot on this show about climate finance, obviously, Untangling Climate Finance. But we talk about capital flows, carbon markets, investment mandates, and policy. And all of that, of course, matters enormously. But here's something that's easy to forget. Every single sustainability strategy ever written, every net zero commitment, every scope 3 target, every ESG pledge eventually has to land somewhere. It lands with a person, an employee, somebody sitting at a desk, boarding a flight, running a supply chain, managing a facility. And if that person doesn't understand what they're being asked to do, or why it matters, or how they fit into the bigger picture, the strategy stays in the PowerPoint. And that is exactly the gap that Ignacio has spent the last 6 years trying to close. DoGood People is what he calls a human action platform, a tool that takes a company's sustainability goals and translates them into real, trackable, daily actions for the people inside that company. Simple, meaningful things, and things that when multiplied across thousands of employees, start to move the needle on culture, on behavior, and yes, on emissions. DoGood People's client list is not small. We're talking Amazon Web Services, MasterCard, and Victoria's Secret, just to name a few. And these are enterprises that understand that writing a sustainability report and actually building a sustainable organization are two very different things. And here's what makes this conversation so important for anyone working in climate finance. Capital without culture doesn't scale. You can deploy billions into green infrastructure, but if the workforce operating that infrastructure hasn't shifted how they think and act, you're leaving an enormous amount of impact on the table. Employee engagement isn't a soft metric. It might just be one of the most underleveraged tools in the entire climate transition. Ignacio is on a mission to prove that, and he's got the receipts. All right, cool beans. Let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Ignacio. Hi, Ignacio. Welcome to the show. How are you doing and where are you calling in from?
I'm very good, very good. We're feeling enthusiastic about this conversation. And yeah, I'm based in Madrid, although I'm from Barcelona, actually.
Nice. How long have you been living in Madrid?
Wow, 25 years. It's because my mother was from Madrid and she decided to marry a guy from Barcelona. But, someone should have told her that it was not a good idea because they ended up divorcing, which was like expected. So just joking.
Yeah. She needed the future lesson from you one day. Be like, Mom, don't do that.
Yeah, that's it.
Great. Well, I'm happy to have you on the episode and hear about what you're up to. So to get us started, why don't you share your full name, your title, and then the quick description of DoGood People for our listeners.
Okay, yeah. My name is Ignacio Barriendos Hoppichler. The second surname comes from Austria. Basically, my grandpa was from there. And yeah, this is my second company. I founded the first one 14 years ago. It was an HR consultancy business. Basically, it was some sort of my playground when it comes to business. Not that I was playing, but I learned do's and don'ts of the business world. Went through very good stuff, but also through many challenges. And then I decided to go for something more. It was both like starting with DoGood, which is we call it a human action platform. It was kind of like a personal challenge because it was scalable, let's say, dream big software thing. And at the same time, like full of purpose. And I've been 6 years leading Do Good. And basically, what we do in there is to help companies and institutions turn all of these sustainability plans into daily actions that people can basically implement. So somehow we say that we move strategies from PowerPoint to reality. That's a bit of the simple framing of what we do.
I like that. It's a great way of painting it. So, Do Good People started as an idea to motivate people to do good, obviously, and then it has evolved into a platform for employee driven environment, social, and governance transformation. And you said you've been leading the company for 6 years. So, why don't you walk me through that evolution? What did the early version of the company look like, and what has changed to today?
Yeah, I would say like the first reflection when I raised like the first pre-seed round, I put together a presentation and basically the presentation said 95% of the people would say yes when asked if they wanted to do something more about the world, but no one does anything. That was a bit like the starting point. And what I found out is that there are three main obstacles people face when willing to contribute. The first one is, I don't know what to do. Second one is, I don't know how to do it. And the third one is, I don't want to be the only stupid one making an effort because I cannot change things by myself.
Yeah.
That was like the summary of the presentation, like there is an ambition to do good. Doing good makes us feel good. The thing is,
Yeah.
we could tell people how to do good or what they could do, and we make them feel that they are not alone, people would do more. That was like the first thing. So we built that first version of the project. I have to say that I didn't know anything about technology, so it's possible to get into such a mess without knowing anything. We built the first version, we released it, it went very well, very fast. Like companies wanted to incorporate it, and it was kind of like the naive way of doing good, It was not linked to anything but to our own definitions of doing good when it came to water, to energy, to social behaviors and all of that. Then what we realized is that when sustainability strategies and regulations and all of that appeared, we realized that we could link these programs that we were running to this strategy. So we moved from these motivating people to do good into building something that allowed corporations to structure these impact programs and to connect their people to their material topics and all of that. So yeah, I mean, it has been an amazing journey, and there we are, still evolving. And now, like the context which changed a lot in the last year, and now with the war and all of that, it's saying that it became untrendy to speak about sustainability suddenly. So we're kind of reframing it again to that start where this is all about doing good. It's not anymore about these labels that we create, sustainability, ESG. This is kind of like the same, and it ends up in how do we get together to shape a better future.
Right. And I think if you keep that as your North Star, then all of the terminology that comes and goes and becomes trendy and untrendy doesn't really matter so much. But as you said, it puts you in a position where you're constantly evolving to what's going on in the world, which, as we both know, is changing rapidly every week, month, day, it feels like. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of the evolution, and as you just explained. And I think I had told you before we had this conversation that I was really excited to have you on the podcast because every other one of my guests has sit squarely in the climate finance space because the thesis of this podcast is climate finance. And I was excited to have you on because you're much more in the human action or human activation space, which is incredibly important. From your perspective, why does engaging employees matter so much to broader either environmental movement or climate movement or just the do good movement generally?
I would say that we are on the ground, and things happen on the ground and change happens on the ground. That's a bit of the thing, like capital somehow is going to enable the operations to happen, but the operations need to be aligned to the future priorities and to the future well-being, so to say. So that's what we do, to try to get the people to understand what is relevant and how this, let's say, brighter future looks like and how they can create it. Because in the end, that's what we want to happen. In the end, what we will do is to enable like the people to build this future. It is going to be, of course, we need this capital to be deployed, but the operations are kind of implemented by the people. So we need the people to understand all of this. We have realized that people will act, in a responsible way if they understand how this affects them in a personal, let's say, level. When they understand how this affects and why this is relevant for them, then we'll want to participate as companies all together. That's a bit of what can I do for my people? What can I do in my, let's say, job? And then how am I going to have an impact on the future look of the world?
Yeah.
So probably it's like the most difficult thing because we do culture. It's something that you can not measure, or you can measure, of course, like things that happen, but probably not like it is not a major like, kind of system like the finance one.
So true. Very difficult to measure, but nonetheless, incredibly important. I want to look at this from like a practical perspective. So Do Good breaks down a company that you work with. It breaks down their sustainability goals or whatever internal goals that they have into specific tasks for individual employees through the app. What does that look like in practice? And can you give me a concrete example of a challenge an employee might complete and then the impact that that challenge completion would generate?
Sure. So what we do is, we take like the strategies of the companies and translate these strategies into these trackable actions that people can take. Then what we do is we tell the people to upload a proof of what they have done, and we estimate the impact that these actions have, and then we group them all together and measure like what of an estimated impact we measure it like from the overall program. For example, in a scope 3 emissions strategy that could be linked to, I don't know, business travel emissions or promoting like this low carbon commuting or responsible consumption habits. So things that can be very complex when they are part of a company strategy, but they look pretty simple when they are like translated into your daily routines, like in the end, one example could be how do you send a responsible email? Because the kind of documents, the length of the emails we send, this is all having an impact on clouds and the servers and in the end, net zero aspect. So if we all send like responsible emails, per every email, you could be saving 20 grams of CO2, which is not going to move the needle of an industrial company. But what if we all knew how to do that? And in the end, if when you train one person to send a responsible email, you make him or her aware that this is going to save some grams of CO2. When they see any other like thing that could have an impact, they will recognize it easily. So that's a bit of what we do, like make them train or make them practice like simple things so that they can recognize like the big things afterwards and can be part of that.
Yeah.
More from the awareness perspective, how all of these small actions multiplied across thousands of people can become material, so to say.
Big time. And I think, as you pointed out, the key is awareness. So many people just go about their work the way that they've been trained to do. And obviously, what they don't know, they simply don't know. And a big part of making any sort of change or creating people to do good is just to initially give them awareness of what it is that they're doing and how that impacts either the company itself, their emissions, financial perspective, whatever.
I think that is something that I experience every day and that frustrates me a lot, like it seems like that the corporate environment and all of this corporate pressure affects us when making, let's say, decisions. It's like you get into your corporate shoes and the only thing you kind of recognize is something that is going to bring revenues or decrease costs, or we kind of get too logic about all of this and forget that there are things that are not like so direct that they're going to affect our strategies in the midterm and that they're relevant, and that's what we very often are not brave enough to trust ourselves and to trust our gut, which is something relevant to shape a better, a more comprehensive financial system in the future.
That's exactly right. Couldn't agree more. Now that we're talking about corporates, I would love to hear what type of companies you work for. the range, and maybe you can give some examples of your past clients or current clients?
Yeah, I mean, the 10 last clients were Amazon, AWS, MasterCard, Victoria's Secret, Galadari. We worked with very big corporates. We also worked with middle-sized corporations. So our value proposition is put your teams together to practice sustainability in a fun way and to learn about it in a fun way. And this seems to fit very well in the enterprise, let's say, ecosystem. So that is why we tend to work with very big corporations. Tell me one country in the world that wouldn't get value out of this. That's what I like the most. We should be hitting every corner of the world, and I'm sure we would bring value to them. So keen on working also with middle-sized corporations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure part of it comes down to what kind of budgets they have and these types of things. But I do think that you're onto something that even middle-sized or small-sized companies, you could make the argument that they would be more motivated to change their actions and their behaviors because oftentimes those smaller companies feel a lot more connected to their coworkers or their colleagues just simply because there's less of them. The big corporations with huge amounts of employees, maybe they have bigger budgets to implement these types of things, but in the smaller and medium-sized companies, they might feel whatever behavior or action they're doing more direct simply because of the size of the company.
Wow, that's going to be a hot topic, but I believe that probably the question is who trusts the big corporations nowadays? That's probably also why big corporations need to try to invest more in engaging their people because it is difficult to trust them and that they haven't been current in the last times. Let's say that they need to prove that they're serious when they speak about all of this because they have not been that serious in some times. I'm not speaking about any specific company. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
It seems that middle-sized corporations are more real, let's say. So people still believe or can believe what they say, while the big ones are facing like one of the most difficult times when it comes to engagement.
That makes a lot of sense. That's kind of what I see from my conversations with companies as well, because we work with groups ranging from team of 5 up to massive corporations that have tens of thousands of employees. So hot topic indeed, but I'm sure one that you have with your team frequently. So as far as I understand, DoGood measures and monitors impact to help companies with their non-financial ESG reporting. And as I'm sure you know, there's always new regulations or there's modifications to current regulations, one being the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive or CSRD, and that's starting to tighten. How does the conversation that you have with your clients or potential clients go from what's nice to have to what's needed to have?
That's interesting. At the very beginning when we started, 2019, Good was a very innovative, fresh, let's say, easy to buy solution. We were bringing something that spoke about doing good in a moment where companies were like performing good. No one doubted of companies that were speaking about doing things in a better way. What happened afterwards is that regulations appeared and companies started to be forced to look like good. So everyone was promising to be net zero and committing to it and thinking about how good they were.
Yeah.
And the problem that brought is that we all started adopting. I mean, it was kind of unfeasible, like all companies could not be that good. So what we did was to shift our value proposition from get your people to enjoy doing good to improve your non-financial reports through your people. We shifted like our value proposition to something more, let's say, financial and more technical. And you know what happened? That we stopped selling. Why? I understood it like time afterwards, but what happened is that we were not the shortest path to look good. Probably we were the best path to get the people to do good and to improve like the culture of your organization and all of that. But if you had 100 bucks, there were like better ways of making your reports look better. In the end, the same companies that were giving you a rating were accepting money to improve your rating.
Right.
So it was a much better option, to give them your money to improve. So in the end, what I have realized is we are relevant as a company because the lack of engagement is even more threatening than a bad non-financial report. That's what I just understood.
Yeah, that is very fascinating, actually. And now that you say that, it seems so obvious to me. But again, I get as going back to what you said, constantly evolving. So understanding that your business proposition can change. Ignacio, do you see companies that are using the data that Do Good generates to inform their sustainability investment decisions, whether that's buying carbon credits or setting internal science-based targets or just allocating internal capital to green projects like tree planting or water reduction or anything like that?
I would say that, what we do is we estimate the impact that the people have in our programs. And very often, and we provide all of that impact, but very often our clients use our data to measure like the evolution of engagement and the culture of the company and how many people are engaged to their impact and all of that. So we're more of a change management tool than I'm going to say than a reporting tool, so to say. So I don't know if that is clear, but I'm going to say that our value proposition is to align your people and make them, let's say, implement your strategies better. So speed up your strategies more than really the impact that we will have by ourselves.
That makes sense. When you're initially collaborating to implement the projects and the app and all of these things, who inside of the company are you typically working with? Is that the head of HR or the head of sustainability, or does it change?
It's a 50-50 between HR and sustainability teams.
Okay, cool. Because I guess, yeah, it probably could be completely different from company to company in terms of how big they are and what their teams look like. So
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense as well. So I'm curious, and maybe you have more than one challenge, but what would you say the hardest objection you hear from companies considering Do Good is, and how do you typically respond to it?
Well, there are many. Very often it's like people ask how we measure and if we can prove like the things and all of that. Or another one is, yeah, but I'm burning. I mean, I have like facilities that are burning tons and tons of CO2. How are you going to change this by, sending responsible emails, as we said before? So you're not going to change that directly, but if you train your people, they will be the ones creating better processes so that your facilities pollute less, So that's a bit of the logic. So it is more, let's say, of implementing a philosophy and a way of working and learning this way of doing than the technical impact of what we do. And that's very often, depending on who you speak to, it's difficult to make them understand this because they are like in their corporate shoes. I don't know. That's one of the things. Then like the facts are how many languages do you have? We got more than 11 languages. In which countries can we put together? Another one is our blue collars do not have access to mobile phones. In the end, there are different ways to implement Do Good depending on the kind of people that will be part of it, and that's a bit of the typical questions. But I'm gonna say, if I have to highlight something, is very often C-level executives are concerned by how many people are going to be part of this if they launch, because they are afraid of failing. And what they don't realize is that not doing anything or not doing something means they are looking to another place, while their engagement is falling and falling. And very often I tell them is, okay, you might have a 20% engagement if you're not in a good moment, like in your company, but what is the alternative? The alternative is doing nothing and then letting this keep dropping. And in the end, you realize is that we need very brave directors. We need brave directors that are accepting that if we are in a low engagement momentum, this is a reality and we'll need to work on improving it, even if this doesn't make us look good in a first instance.
Definitely in need of strong leadership and brave leaders. So here we are. We're sitting in March, the 3rd of March, which is hard to believe, but we still have the bulk of the year ahead of us. If you could look towards the end of 2026, where would you like Do Good People to be?
Wow. Somehow we are moving from being a Spanish company to a global one. So I'd like to say or to get to having users in more than 50 countries by then. That would be my goal, to prove that, that we can get to all of these people all around, and that it doesn't matter where you live, what race you are, and the colors and all of these things that people speak about are not going to make a difference in our ambitions to doing good.
Well, I hope you achieve it. That would be an incredible milestone. And I'm sure you can expand without a doubt. There's got to be a lot of great opportunity in other countries. And as you had said, I'm sure your team speaks numerous languages. So that definitely helps as well.
Yeah, well, actually launching with KPMG Canada, a global program, and this is part of what is making me feel very enthusiastic that we are reaching like corporates in all the continents, and somehow we are closer to hitting that.
That's exciting. Doesn't KPMG have a tower in Madrid?
Yeah, they do, they do, they do.
They're one of the what, 4 or 5 towers there?
Life is like this. Like I spoke to the guys in KPMG Spain and no one cared about us. And then got an intro to the lady in Canada, which is actually like the social leader or the leader for social sustainability. And we're going global with them. So yeah, interesting.
That is funny. That is how life works. Exactly. You're like, I'm back. All right. Well, we are towards the end of the episode. And so I've got just one more question. Climate finance depends obviously on more than just capital. As you know, it depends on people genuinely believing that transition or doing good matters. What do you think is one thing that the greater climate or environmental ecosystem needs to do better to activate and sustain that human belief at scale?
I would say, if no one like to recommend anything, but I'm going to say that what I think would help is if we were aware that the financial system or the financial models that we need in the future have aspects, or to consider aspects that we are not considering nowadays, and stick to that and allow ourselves to prioritize things that wouldn't be a priority if we would stick to the current financial models, I think would be improving like the world, and of course like the financial system. So somehow it's like, how do we create a P&L that embraces a better world? And how do we make decisions that count on that? So even if diversity is not valued enough by the financial systems that we have currently, how do I live and make decisions considering that the future financial models will value this? And that's how I think would kind of evolve faster if we would be brave enough to make decisions according to an enhanced financial system.
Very well said. And I think it comes back to the theme that you've been alluding to throughout this episode, which is just a bit of bravery.
Yeah, a bit of bravery. Yeah.
Looking towards the future, and that there's always going to be some change, and maybe that the system that we sit in today used to work, but it doesn't work so well today. And so we just need to not be so afraid of that change and lean into our bravery, and the outcome with a bit of work will be better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to become rebels.
Yeah, for sure. I like looking at it that way, because we just continue the way that it is and don't get people excited or enthusiastic, nothing will ever improve. So we got to get them to do good. All right, Ignacio, thank you so much. I am going to put links to your website and your client list and all of that stuff in the show notes so that whoever is listening can easily access the great work that you guys are doing. And as I said, was really excited to have you on here, because I think that the human piece of everything that we do is so important, but sometimes ignored. And you did a fantastic job explaining what you guys are doing and how you've changed to the modern challenges. And it's just been great to talk. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Ciao. Well, folks, it's about that time. I'm turning off the mic soon. Many, many thanks to Ignacio for joining me from Madrid and for bringing such a grounded, honest perspective on what it actually takes to get people moving in the right direction, inside companies, and ultimately across the world. If this combo sparks something for you, I've linked DoGood People's website and more information about their platform in the show notes. So whether you're sitting in HR, sustainability, or somewhere in the C-suite wondering why your strategy isn't sticking, it's worth a look. And if you want to explore what a do-good program might look like for your organization, reach out directly to Ignacio and his team. His contact information is linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed this epi, please follow, rate, and share the show on Apple and Spotify. It helps more people find us, and the more people we reach, the more we can move this whole thing forward together. For more on climate finance, carbon markets, and impact investing, don't miss our weekly audio brief, Sliced, right here on this exact same feed. All right, thanks for being here. I'll be back next month with another ep of Untangling Climate Finance. This podcast is brought to you by Gordian Strategies.